Hello and welcome to Console Shock, episode 79, retro and modern gaming chat with me, Trev, and as always, the Ayatollah of rock and roller.
What was that?
I think actually, well, there's two kind of places that turns up in. Mad Max 2, the road one, the humongous, the bad guy in that, the humongous.
Yeah.
Of the Ayatollah, and Chris Jericho, the wrestler.
Okay, I was thinking you're sort of describing me as like the leader of Iran who's into rock music, and I couldn't see the link, but you related it to Chris Jericho, so
the way your hair
is,
and you're getting there.
I know it's got to get cut soon. 12th of April.
How you doing? What you been up to?
Good.
You playing them old video games?
I have, yeah. I'm still playing Dirt 5 on my Xbox, playing that quite a lot, and God of War on the PS2. Really enjoying that.
Dirt was on Game Pass, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So it was a bit of a freebie, so I grabbed that.
The War of the God. You been playing that?
Yeah, you should really play the first one first. What I'm playing, start with number 2. That's the one I've got.
I've got the collection on the Vita, so I might go with. Yeah, I think it has like 1 and 2. I think
1 and 2. Yeah, that's right.
I think there's a PS3 version of that as well, so you can sort of do a.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, it's a PS3 version. I think there's a PS3 version of the 2 PSP games as well.
Yeah, you're right.
That's really worth getting. Yeah.
They had a little spate, didn't they, where they were spitting out all these kind of cool, actually, sort of HD collection thingies that you didn't really get 360 versions of. Well, a lot of them were so kind of games, like Ratchet and Clank and like Trilogy and God of War. I think there was like a Tomb Raider one though.
There was Tomb Raider, yeah, that came out on the PS4, I think. And then there was Jack and Daxter one as well. I don't know if you just mentioned that, but yeah, there's quite a few of them.
I think they didn't do the Tomb Raider on the Xbox because I think a lot of those Tomb Raider games, like it was like Legend and Anniversary, they came out anyway on 360 in that kind of year and a bit before the PS3 came out.
That's right, yeah.
Had them anyway, so I didn't really need a HD sort of version. But so I've actually myself, I've been playing, and I think we're going to do an episode on this. It might be the next one actually. We shall see. But I managed to get a nice big fat download of every PS1 game that ever come out in the US.
Yeah.
So I made sure I purchased all of the original discs.
So you originally owned all the discs?
Yeah. And also, if you catch anyone, Stu, if you catch anyone downloading these ISOs, don't own all the discs, email Sony immediately. You can't be having that.
I will, because if you told me you own the disc, and that's fine. There's not a problem.
I'll be like, have you downloaded Rallycross without downloading the game? I'll know. I'm going to tell I don't know who's the main Sony dude these days. The main Sony, I'm going to call him
Cerny, Mr. Cerny.
Cerny, yeah, Mark Cerny. I'm going to tell him.
Yeah.
My mate Stu has downloaded Rallycross, the ISO, and I don't think he's got the disc. I can't be sure, but I just know what he's like. So yeah, is that all right? I'll leave that with you. Cool.
Yeah, no problem.
You'll be hearing from him, my friend.
Anyway, you've downloaded all of the ISOs. What size was all of the ISOs for the PlayStation? What's it like? Something like 4,000 games, isn't there?
It was just the US games, although there was a lot of fluff in there. There was like revision 1 and 2 of 3 of a game. Like every official US PlayStation magazine disc, which I don't really want. Some weird oddball education titles that I'm not interested. So I had to sort of type it. But the initial download's about 0.5 terabyte. Going in the background for a few days. Not telling you where I got it from. You can work that out yourself. And then I had to sort of do a bit of trimming to get rid of the stuff that I didn't want, and it ended up being about 500 gig after I'd unzipped them all. Basically, a nice collection of just the mainline kind of games. I did have to cut all the Disney games out though, and that meant I could fit them on my hard drive that I was planning on having them on. I literally just like ones that had Disney in the title, just searched for that, deleted them all, and that chopped out 50 gig of just that.
Some of the Disney games are good.
I can't think of the only one that I think I was.
Is that Mickey Mouse platformer?
There was Mickey. I kept that. Mickey's Wild Adventure.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
that was Mickey Mania, the PS1 version, but it's a very good version of the game. and Hercules. I quite like that. I played the demo once. But yeah, the rest of them are just kind of, I'm not really bothered about them. I think the glory days of the Disney games was kind of the Mega Drive and the SNES kind of era.
Exactly.
Like, modern day ones are pretty good, but yeah. So yeah, I'm enjoying that. Enjoying kind of like what I hinted at might be an episode. Those really weird sort of first couple of year games. PS1 had, even some crap ones like Excalibur 2055 AD, which is awful, like dungeon crawler game, but kind of fun in the same time.
It was such a great time. So this exploring basically all different ways of doing the games. It was the first time we really had 3D games.
Yeah, ESPN Extreme Sports was a launch game. It's kind of fun, actually. So, you know what? I was like, oh, this is going to be utter toilet. Played it, and it was actually like Road Rash, the 3DO Road Rash. It's actually quite good. There is the actual 3DO Road Rash on the PS1 as well, and it runs a bit better. But yeah, I won't go into detail. Well, I think we need to do an episode on that weird, early years of PS1. But we actually, for today, we have a guest, don't we, Stu?
Yes, we've got Scott. If I can say your first name, Scott. Should have asked that, maybe. We've got.
No, you're fine. It's good.
Okay, cool. Scott. His date of birth is no Scott. we got Scott from the YouTube channel, the Retro Shack. So, Scott, introduce yourself.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you very much, Trev and Stu, for having me on.
No problem.
It's that reminded me, if you're a fan of Alan Partridge, there was a great line he did where he said, and today on the show we're going to be talking. We're going to hear from a guy who is married but gay and afraid to come out. He's going to talk to us about his, about how he's dealing with that. We're not going to use his full name, obviously. So we'll just refer to him by his first name, Domingo from Little Oakley. And so no, that's fine. You can use my real. I have. I think
it's like, oh, he's hung up. He's hung up. Oh well.
Yeah, he's a very good tapas bar in Little Oakley. Yeah. But yeah, no, thanks. It's very nice to be on. Thank you very much. The Retro Shack. So a relatively new channel.
How did you get started then? Obviously, being fairly new, there's a lot of stuff that is along the lines of what you cover, like old vintage computing. What sort of made you think I want to do a channel on that now?
It's easy, isn't it? Because I can look at what everyone else has done and just rehash it and do it again. But no. In all honesty, what it was is it was a way of turning a hobby that I've had for many years, both collecting and repairing old machines. I refuse to say I'm a hoarder. My wife would probably argue that I am. But she said, well, she's actually stopped me selling things now on the basis that she knows I'll buy it again. So she's now, even though she's just keep it, we'll find some way for it. But it got to the point, we had obviously a lockdown, and I found myself watching a lot of YouTube channels, and a lot of people. You've had Neil from RMC on your show before. Been watching that channel for many years, watching the 8-bit guy, and always thinking, this is what I want to do. This would be great. Wouldn't it be fun to do that? That's awesome. And it kind of dawned on me that actually the only difference between them and me was that I wasn't filming what I was doing. It's the old thing, isn't it? The only difference between people who do and people who don't is the doing. So I thought, well, I've watched Netflix, all of that, and we've watched all of Prime, and I've read the internet. So until Internet 2 comes out, I should really maybe do something that's useful and hopefully interesting. And I've got a bit of a quirky sense of humor, so I thought that might come across as well. And the first couple of videos, I think the first video went live on the 13th of December. And I was doing this for a video we did at the weekend announcing a competition winner. A month later, on January the 13th, I had 293 subscribers, and I was over the moon. I thought, this is great. There's actually more than immediate family and friends who've watched this. And then, you spin forward a couple of months, and we're at nearly 6,000 subs, and
Was there a video that kind of landed that you think triggered it, or was it?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, it was interesting. It was the thing that I suppose triggered the algorithms that started putting me in front of people was a controversial video where I said, "Is this the only Commodore 64 cartridge you ever need?" You know, wow.
Oh,
you know, actually, yeah, wave that in front of the Commodore 60 fanboys, of which I am one, because I'd watch that and argue, you know, of course it isn't, because of the 5 I've got are the only ones you ever need. And it was exactly what I thought would happen. It kind of just got a lot of engagement. People were commenting on it, agreeing and saying that's really cool, or no, mine's better. And you know, I realized that actually, whether or not I have the answer, it's good to provoke the debate. And there's a lot of I suppose purists who have a very definite opinion one way. Maybe it's something they've grown up with, or something they really respect, or they admire, or they can't see past, or whatever it is, but they're engendered into a particular view. And I like to kind of throw something else in there and go, well, have you thought about this? One of the big ones we did a couple of weeks ago was a replacement SID chip for a Commodore 64. And it was, okay, is this replacement SID chip as good as the original? And I did a little giveaway. I said, you know, for me personally, not being an audiophile, which you'll know if you've seen the early videos, which took a bit of a pounding because people, the music was far too loud and I didn't know what I was doing, etc., etc. But genuinely, I put this replacement SID chip in my Commodore and couldn't tell the difference. 5 minutes apart, there's no way I'd have known. So I just thought, well, okay, let's see if the community feel the same way. And again, that video got loads of views, lots of engagement, and people polarized either way. And then people in the middle going, yeah, you know what, actually, it's pretty good. And the interesting thing about that is, and I made a case of this in the reveal video, people were so entrenched in their view. You know, they were literally, I will, you know, kill my kids and sell my house and move to them if I'm not right. It's definitely that A is the original chip, or B is, you know, they were so in there. And you know what? Good 60% of people were wrong. And that behind the scenes, so to speak, is just really, really interesting. So that's kind of why I started it, was just to kind of put what I do privately out there, because I think it's interesting. I enjoy watching it, so I figure other people will. But every now and again, I like to throw in a real, you know, question that hopefully polarizes people and brings people out into a debate, because I just find it really interesting. And that's where, of course, you learn things, because people go, well, you know, you didn't know blah blah blah, and you think, actually, no, I didn't know that. I'm going to go and look it up, and you know, maybe they're right. And so yeah, it's a real good learning experience.
I just actually went back and looked at, because I put a comment on your video and I said it was chip A.
And you were right.
Oh, there you go. Chuffed.
Yeah, well done.
I thought that sounded better. That's what I remember, because I never had a Commodore 64 back in the day. I always had the Spectrum, and hearing A, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds better. I enjoy listening to that slightly more than B.
And the argument that a lot of people threw in was, it's so much better, it can't possibly be the 40-year-old chip. You know, it's better, therefore it must be the newer chip. But no, it's you know, those old SID chips really do have quite a unique sound, but lost on me. You know, 5 minutes apart on either one, I couldn't tell you the difference anyway. But no, it's interesting stuff, and the way I've positioned the channel is very much not only looking back at these old machines and refurbishing them, but what is out there in terms of modern new technology that makes these machines actually relevant and fun to use today. And that in each kind of mark of machines, so the Atari and Commodore, they've all got their own little group of die-hard fans and experts who are constantly coming out with new things that, you know, you think, part of you goes, why? And then the other part of me goes, I'm so glad they do. Because you know, the fact that I can load up my my Spectrum and stick a div MMC in the back and have the entire library, as you've just been talking about with your PlayStation. I can have the entire library of legally owned bought copies of games at my total disposal on something the size of my fingernail. It actually, you have to stop and think, that's just incredible. If I could go back to my 12-year-old self and say, this in the future, this is what you're going to be able to do. You're not going to have to sit and wait for 7 minutes for this game to load, but you'll be able to, and you'll have the entire library of everything you own on something that small. I'd have laughed at myself.
So that's, at the moment, there's all these amazing sort of quality of life improvement things, and you get them on, I mean, the Amiga, WHD Load, and the Spectrum, the Commodore 64, and that's just because all the old we've talked about in the past, but all of the old technology it's just fading away. It's just the magnetic tapes are then degrading, and then obviously that they won't work after a while. So it's the only way to really use them, really.
And that's a really good point, because whether or not you're a purist and you think you shouldn't be doing it that way, the only true way to enjoy a retro machine is to go through the experience of putting a cassette in. Well, the fact is that in another 20 years' time, those cassettes won't work, and there won't be cassette recorders around that are functioning. I mean, there'll be a few, but you know what I mean. They won't be readily available. So I see these things as not a way of forgetting about the past, but really of ensuring you protect those experiences going forward. One of the things I reviewed, got sent to me to review, was a digital tape player for a Spectrum. So, it stores all the tapes on SD card, but you still have to go through the process of watching the game load and waiting for it to load. Cool. And it's awesome, because there are, as you will know, there are some games out there that do things while they load. So there are even some games that play games while you're waiting for the game to load. And of course, you miss all that in the instant gratification, push a button and you're playing. So again, it's fascinating stuff, and I just think that it's such a vast world. And then you've got people doing really out there things, like the Commander X16 project that David Murray and Perifractic are putting together.
Yeah, that looks good.
And they're just amazing. It's a new machine that if you didn't know, you'd say was old, and it's such a clever thing. And the Spectrum Next, I've got a Spectrum Next, and it's just, you think, well, it's just a bonkers idea, but thank goodness there are people out there that are bonkers enough to do it, because it's great.
Talking about bonkers, I did watch one of your videos where you bought all the chips and you had like a gold case for a Spectrum 48K, and you basically made it. So you had the board, and then you put all the chips in. I think I watched the whole thing, and sometimes it's one of those things where it's just, it's all in sort of time lapsed, and I think it's great fun to watch. And I was like, oh man, I can't use a soldering iron or things like that. And you see that you're putting all the chips on and connecting everything up. And so what made you sort of, I guess, make your own Spectrum 48K machine?
It's I suppose it's the standard Everest answer, isn't it? Because I could. And it's one of those things, again, I just thought it was fascinating. And I don't know if you know, but the story behind that is that a guy, I think his name was Chris Smith. Don't quote me on that one, anyone listening to this. But a few years ago, this guy basically reverse engineered the ULA inside the Spectrum. So Sinclair and Acorn and various other manufacturers went down the route of minimizing the chip count in their computers by creating these early FPGA type devices that were multiple chips, multiple functionality in one chip, and therefore you had less chips to make, and therefore it's cheaper. And the Spectrum and the ZX81 had these ULAs, and as a result, you couldn't really replace them with off-the-shelf parts, because once those ULAs were stopped being made, they weren't anymore. There are now people have deconstructed them and reconstructed them in modern ways. But this guy, what he did was went back and completely reverse engineered the Spectrum ULA down to the individual chips that it replaced. And once you'd done that, of course, you then could build a Spectrum using totally off-the-shelf parts. And a very clever chap called Don Superfo created this Harlequin kit, which, you buy the kit, you buy the ICs, you spend 8 hours soldering the damn thing together, and you stick in an original Spectrum ROM, and you've got yourself a Spectrum. And that to me, just thought, well, if I could take that back to 12-year-old me, I'd have just that would have been it. That would have been Christmas, birthdays for years. I'd have been so happy. So you know what? Yeah, basically, it made me happy. That's why I did it. And you know what? It's a damn sexy looking machine as well. You put that. It's my favorite. I've got a Spectrum Next, but I use the one I built more than the Next because I built it.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Everyone likes to have the computer they've put together, and to have a Spectrum that's put together, by your own hands is quite amazing. I mean, are there any sort of improvements that you did to it, or is it literally a stock 48K Spectrum?
Actually, it's a 128K ROM in that, so and it's got dip switches as well, so you can switch it between 48K and 128K models. And there are in later revisions of the board, you can add in things like joystick ports, and this one's also got a S-video out, so it's got no modulator, so it's really nice and clear. So it goes out to a SCART TV nicely, or HDMI upscaler. So yes, I have played Manic Miner on my huge flat screen TV, and
feel like if you want to cook up an old computer like that to your TV, you haven't gone down the cheap Amazon one route that retro RGB will kill everybody that they use, or have you got like a Frame Meister or anything like?
No, I've looked at RetroTinks. I've looked at the what's the one everyone uses? There's a really expensive one. I can't remember.
OSSC, the open source.
That's it. The OSSC one. Yeah, and it's one of those things that I thought, well, just how good a quality does it need to be to upscale 320 by 200 or 320 by 192 or 25? We're talking, how good can it get? Even if you upscale, if you made it twice as good as it was originally, it's still brilliant. Now I've got a really cheap SCART to HDMI converter. Okay. And I've got a HDMI USB 3 video capture. So as long as I can output SCART, I can capture it and capture footage. If I struggle with that, then I normally will film off the actual CRT itself, because that's quite cool as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
But to be fair, most machines do have some form of RGB output or composite. And of course, you can go composite to SCART to HDMI. So, there's always a route, and you don't need to spend hundreds of pounds. When I started the channel, and indeed now, I don't have hundreds of pounds to spend on just capturing video. So I was innovative and well, let's just say cheap. But it works.
I know you feel it's a headache, isn't it? I mean, the annoying thing, like I've had designs on getting an OSSC, sorry, and the trouble with that is it only does RGB only. It won't accept composite. I've got a couple of consoles that are just composite at the moment. I've got my N64. I haven't had that. I'm sure I will at some point, but it's not RGB, and it isn't. They don't have RGB by default. You've got to mod them. If I was going to mod it, maybe I'll go all out and get the Ultra HDMI, I think it is, for the N64. That's very expensive. I have to get a bit of money together for that. So I can't really use an OSSC because a couple of my consoles, 3DO, I've got a 3DO that I kind of keep out, and that's composite only. To be honest, I'm kind of thinking with getting stuff onto HDMI, of just getting like the Rad2X cables and just maybe getting one each. I mean, I've got about 5 or 6 of those out. That'll cover me for PS1. I tend to play PS1 on a PS3, so I'm kind of already sorted, really. Saturn, Mega Drive, SNES, PC Engine. I'll be able to get all those basically hooked up with a single cable, the Rad2X cables. They are expensive though; they're about 50 quid nearly each. So you end up burning a couple of hundred to get all them connected. And and there's some of them need a USB power as well, so you might be able to just jack it into the back and that's it, one and done. It is a bit of a frustration. I feel the frustration that you might have with those.
Yeah, I think that one of the things of obviously the really early machines, some of them didn't have even RF output. You know, just terminal machines. You had to actually terminal into them to get them to work. Or if you go back far enough, of course, they just had little LEDs on, no screen whatsoever. But no, I mean, the way I kind of work it is it's almost like a balance in my head of how much do I spend on any given machine to make a feature video versus will I continue to use that machine going forward? Is there enough life in it to do, to come back to that machine and add more to it going forward? Because you don't want to kind of spend a couple of £100 on a machine, another couple of £100 doing it up, for then that to just sit on a shelf and never get used by me and never be revisited on the channel because you've expended all the things there are for it. So it's a balancing act of finding the things that I find interesting, but also you can build on and revisit so that viewers of the channel can come back and go, oh, see what he's doing with it now. I remember when he stuck that in there, and if you go wind yourself back 10 videos, it's a different machine than it was then. So I think that kind of hopefully builds some loyalty and growth, and people feel like they've been along for the journey, which I think is important.
So I think that's what people want with the YouTube channel, and they want a narrative. They want to feel like, oh, we know this guy, and he bought something, he upgraded it, then he upgraded it a bit more, then didn't use it for a while, then he bought some new games. It's almost sort of like a little bit of a story you're telling about it, and that's what brings people back. So there's plenty of good videos out there, but then it's really sort of the characters behind the actual videos that I think get people sort of excited about the content.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think it almost goes back to the days when TV sort of changed from being Monster of the Week to story arcs and having that narrative. There was a time when you could just tune into any show at any time. It doesn't matter if you've not seen it for weeks and you don't watch it for another year, but you will watch that episode and enjoy it. But obviously the TV realized that if you can get people invested and people are along for the arc, then they'll come back. They'll want to see what you're going to do next because they enjoyed what you did last time and you kind of left it hanging or open for more. And it makes it, I suppose it's a driver for me as well, because it means I can't just stop. I'm always leaving it, and I'm the kind of person who can't just leave a thread hanging. So if I mention in a video, I might come and do this. In my head, that's another video I've got to make. And hopefully the viewers will go, oh, well, I'm going to stay subscribed because I want to watch that when it happens. So I'm trying to come across as not totally self-effacing and it's all for me, but it's kind of all for me because it makes me do these things. Whereas if I just did a kind of Monster of the Week, I think I'd get bored. Yeah,
it's also like when you're talking about how it has to be kind of a computer or a console that has an ongoing flood of updates that are coming, whether it's new cables to plug it into a TV or a new controller or a new audio chip you can solder in, or an ODE or something. So that's an interesting decision that you've got to kind of make. You can have a super obscure system that maybe you'd pay a lot of money for to get in, but then you might do the one video and then that's all you can really do because there's no community. So you're probably in safe hands with what you've done on your channel, lots of Commodore 64, even things like Acorn Electrons and things. These do have communities, and I think Spectrum and Commodore, you could probably just live off them, couldn't you, really? But you could still jump to the Amiga and the Atari ST.
I'm glad in the future videos you're never going to do any Atari ST content. I'm really pleased about that, Scott.
Yeah. Well, actually, funny you should mention that.
You're not. I can't believe it.
Yeah. No. Atari ST, I had one. You know, my journey, if I can remember this in the computer, we can talk consoles as well because I'm a big console fan. But in computers, then I was Spectrum, then I was Amstrad CPC, then an Amiga. I think there was a Sword M5 in there at some point. If you'd want to look one of those up, So from the ST to the Amiga. And then into PC land. So yeah, for me, I never owned a Commodore 64 when I was a kid. That was later in life. Never owned an Electron, never owned a BBC, used them at school. Never had an Atari 400 or 800, but my friends did. So, you know, growing up in that arena, everyone having different things. And you know what, actually, this brings me on something I did want to talk about, and that is the whole rivalry that always has fascinated me, because I've always bet on the underdog. I've always been on that the second tier, never the top tier. So, and I don't mean that with any disrespect to any machine, but you know, if you look at, for example, the Spectrum and the Commodore, very different machines, very different. One had all the custom chips and, you know, hardware sprites and scrolling and fantastic music and blah blah blah. That was great, and more memory. But you know what? I love my little Spectrum, and even though it didn't have all that stuff, I defended it to their hilt. You know, at school when people go, "Oh, it's not as good as Commodore 64," I'm there going, "Oh, well, actually, I think you'll find the screen resolution's higher," and really going for it, because I really believed and wanted that machine to be successful. And that playground rivalry in the 8-bit era just resurfaced again with the ST and the Amiga. I had an ST and my friend had an Amiga. And even though, you know, hand on heart, yeah, the music was better on his machine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he didn't have such big borders. And yeah, he could have more colors on screen and all those things. And I spent hours convincing myself it didn't matter, and that mine was just as good and the Atari was just as good. And if you pushed it really, really hard, you could get it to the base level of an Amiga. You know, you could get 512 colors on screen at once if it did nothing else. And for me, that was a really good lesson, in that it doesn't, you know, sometimes you're just going to be second best, and you have to accept the fact that actually that's fine and you can still enjoy it. And even that went on into the whole PlayStation and you know, the Sega machines and the Xbox versus PlayStation in modern times. I think people like to defend their camp. You know, they've pick a side, and you might begrudgingly respect something on the other side, but by God, you will never admit they're better than yours. It's just not going to happen.
You don't want to admit that you've bought the sort of the wrong machines. It hasn't got as many games and things like that. And I think that's what it sort of feels like, because you know, when you're younger, you know, the Amiga was like £300-400, or the Atari was a, you know, very similar amount, and you knew you weren't going to get both of them. You know, you bought one or you bought the other, and so you were like, yeah, I've bought the right one because of this, and you didn't want to sort of show that, I don't know, oh, actually, God, I wish I bought the other one. And you might.
It's weird how it's progressed in my life as well, because I remember distinctly wanting a PC engine. Didn't want a Super Nintendo. Didn't buy a SNES. I wanted a PC engine, and the fact that I could only buy it from either you know, not online, but I could order it from abroad, or I had to go to Leicester to this retro game shop that was there, and I'd pay ridiculous money. I wanted to, because I wanted the underdog to win. And that's
going to Leicester to a retro game shop. Is that Telegames?
It was Telegames. Yeah. It was Telegames. Yeah,
they're amazing.
Yeah, they were amazing. I also used to go to a place over at I can't remember where it was now. It was over Haverhill way, and it was like, it did all of the like computer games and stuff, and you'd go over there, and I used to buy all my computer games from them. They sold like mail order, but you could I'll have to find it out. But yeah, so Telegames was great, and you go in there, and it was almost like an Aladdin's cave of,
you know what, I never actually went. I always saw tons of adverts for it, and I knew they existed. my impression was that I think he's still around to this day. I think it's one dude that kind of runs it. And it was like a warehouse, and you kind of went in and he had like brand new stock of like TurboGrafx 16, PC Neo Geo. So you've actually been to it. What was it actually like?
Do you know what? I remember standing there when these the Super Graphics came out. So the upgraded PC Engine in that fantastic dark grey colour. And I went over there and it had obviously the CD-ROM unit and all that. And I stood there watching Super Ghouls and Ghosts running on that machine, and it was £700. And
Wow.
And I was there, and I was literally had my credit card, and I was like, if I do this, I absolutely know 100% tomorrow morning I'm going to regret it. But I was in that store for probably about 3 hours, walking up and down, arguing with myself, buy it, don't buy it, and trying to find a justification of why I should buy it.
£700 for just the game, or the?
I think it was a bundle. I think it was the Super Graphics itself, plus I think a couple of there was a shoot 'em up, which I can't remember what it was, and the Ghouls and Ghosts. But the games themselves, the Hue cards or the CD-ROMs, they were like £80-90. Because they were Japanese, they were just imported from Japan, and I mean, it was a great place, and it was exactly what you were saying. It was like a warehouse full of stuff that if you had no sense and a credit card, you would be bankrupt in hours.
There's like no. I mean, looking online, I mean, there's no real pictures of what it's like to go in. Was it like a shop then, or was it like shelves?
It was a shop in that it had a counter.
Right.
But it was like a cash and carry for electronics.
Right.
It was stacked, floor to ceiling with stuff. And you would literally go in and just walk around going, I want. And it was a really, I don't think I ever went and didn't come out after having spent, more money than I wanted to. Because of course, back in the day, this was just before the days of the internet. You couldn't just pop online, price compare, order it on Amazon or eBay or something like that. Your choices were limited. If you wanted this stuff, that was the sort of place you had to go to get it.
He's still going to this day. I mean, I have actually bought from him over the last few years. I don't know if you go there and actually visit it. I think it's probably been bled dry now with all collectors and everything. Can't imagine a lot of the big ticket stuff would be there anymore. But I actually bought a Turbo Express from him. It was expensive, but it's cheaper than what they go for on eBay now. It's only a few years ago. Got it brand new, and I got a voucher from work. It's just like a credit card thing from work or a debit card that you get as like an award for being, finishing a project really well or something. And I actually used that to buy another one that I was going to keep mint in the box, and I've kept it in the box and haven't taken it out or done anything with it. So I managed to snag two from him. So it was a fair bit of money, but one was free. People that are desperate for a Turbo Express, I managed to get one.
Well, that's amazing. I didn't realize he was still going, so I might have to look him up. And if it's in the same place as well, that's got to be a weekend trip out when we can all travel again. Because I imagine that'll bring back incredible memories.
The website's still going. You can still buy stuff from him, but I think again a lot of the stuff I think is gone now. Some of the big stuff. I don't know how much sort of Turbo Graphics or PC Engine stuff he's got. But I mean, God, the guy was running that place in in the 80s and the 90s. He must be nearly retirement age now. Might even, or maybe he's passed it on to someone that's running it, or it might be the same dude that's been there all along and is still toddling along. But definitely.
Interestingly, the first game I ever finished totally was Dungeon Explorer on the PC Engine.
Cool, yeah.
And to this day, that music of that game, I think, is some of the best music of any game ever made.
I like the overworld sort of theme that you get when you're sort of obviously in the overworld. I really like that initial theme. Really good, actually.
It was a stonking game, and I mean, obviously, if you look at it in, I suppose, the harsh light of day to day, it's not particularly deep. It's the same thing over and over again. But it did it with such style, and the graphics and the sound were amazing. I mean, when you consider that's an 8-bit machine, effectively.
We did a whole. If you dive through our archive a few years ago, didn't we, Stu? We did an episode on Turbo Graphics. So I kind of got quite familiar with it in the last few years, and I kind of I'm a fairly, decent amount of knowledge about, how all the different models and some of the, I still play it really regularly to this day. I'm a big fan of shmups, and that's obviously the dream console for shmups.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the PC engine. So, and nowadays you can basically get the basic, white, tiny PC engine from Japan. They're fairly cheap. The original white machine from Japan.
Right.
Buy them from Japan on eBay cheaper than someone selling it in the UK. So I'd advise people to maybe go for that and grab yourself a Super SD System 3, slot that on the back of the white PC engine. You'll get RGB out from that device using a Mega Drive 2 SCART lead, really straightforward. And you basically, you put an SD card in there. You've got get all your CD ISOs on it. You can get all the Hue card games, and it turns it into an absolute PC engine dream.
Well, I think you might have given me an idea for a future video there. Again, it's for me, but I'll do it and see if anyone else enjoys it as well. But they say this was in the time when having a PC engine was pretty rare back in, was it 1990? It must have been 89, 90.
I think it's up there with Geo, isn't it? For probably the top two most sought after would probably be. Well, I guess you've got things like the Sharp X6800 and things like that. But
they never really got a release over here, did they? Because people knew about the PC engine, and I actually remember years ago I bought a Turbo Graphics from Telegames, all boxed up, new, and I remember it's the sort of special European one that's, I think it had AV out, which the American ones didn't. And then it also it was like grey instead of the American ones, which were black.
It plays all the US games, the US.
Yeah, and I've had mine modified, and I haven't really used it for a while, but I've modified to actually play the PC Engine games as well. So it was just, they just swapped the pins around.
They're pretty good. You've basically you're stuck with 50 hertz, so you can't mod those UK Turbo Graphics for 60. No one's figured out a mod for them. Plus, there's so few of them. America.
Exactly. There must be, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000 maybe. Yeah. So what's the point in modding them?
Well, you hope that someone out there will eventually, because they can. And that's the great thing about the kind of the scene I'm into, is that very, very often there's been very few things that I thought, wouldn't it be cool if that didn't eventually someone did, because all it takes is someone with the same idea who's cleverer than me.
There's a big scene with the Turbo Graphics for modding it. Mainly, a lot of the ones that have impressed me are to do with the handheld, the Turbo Express. There's people that switch out the screen on it to put a brand new sort of LCD in there that's much better than the old one. The old one's still pretty good, as you're planning on playing RPGs on it, but it had a really good active matrix screen back in the day, which is why it was so expensive. I
hope you're not inferring it might be better than the original Atari Lynx screen.
Yeah, that was like one of the better ones actually out of the colour handhelds, wasn't it? It's better than the one.
It had a 1.5 degree viewing angle though, didn't it? You had to be looking at it in exactly the right way.
Sure there was a viewing angle on it. I'm not even
sure. Yeah, very, very probably not. But no, the machine I've been looking for a while. Well, there are two. I missed out on eBay on one, which was slightly overpriced, but I would have gone for it. Two of them are the Enterprise 128. So that was obviously a very little known machine. You might not have even heard of it.
I've not heard of it.
Okay, so well, back in '83, when the Spectrum was riding high and the Commodore 64 was doing well, there was a company that I believe it was oddly, it's one of these things that I think it was headed up by one of the chess world champion at the time, and he ran a software house that did chess software, and this Japanese firm said, "Oh, we want a slice of the 8-bit micro market," and so they came up with this machine. And I do look it up because I'm gonna get one. I'm gonna do it on the channel because they're amazing. It was called. It came off. It was going to be called the ELAN Enterprise and the FLAN, and then it was just the Enterprise. But it was a Z80, but it had like tons better graphics modes and more memory and sound. I want one of those. I would probably literally, run down someone in the street to get one of those.
I mean, how many did they sell in the first place?
Oh, probably about 12.
About 12. Okay.
Well, probably a few more than that, but it certainly. What happened was it was just it went either side of the video game crash of '83. So when they first announced it in computer video games, it was phenomenally powerful. You'd look at that and go, "My goodness, I want that. That's so much better than anything out there." But by the time they released it in 1985, it was kind of the 16-bit machines came out that year, and it kind of just got.
Was it sort of black in color?
It was a very dark grey, and it had like the Amstrad CPC. It had bright green and red keys and a little joystick in the bottom right hand side. So yeah, it was a very obscure machine, and it was kind of seen as being, I suppose, the original kind of Spectrum Next. I guess it was taking all the essence of the Spectrum. Probably even more so than that's the Sam Coupe, which was the I suppose honorary successor to the Spectrum. But yeah, so the Enterprise 64 is one, and the other one is an FM Towns. I've got to get myself an FM Towns one day. But I haven't seen one. Yeah, I haven't seen one advertised anywhere in a dog's age. I don't know how rare they are now, but I think everyone that was ever made is sitting in someone's collection.
It's got a really good arcade ports. I think there's obviously Street Fighter 2, a great version of that on it. I think like Final Fight and Gradius and Konami and Capcom games. Have you ever used one? Because if you've used one, you're already up there, in my opinion. I haven't. No, all I know about it is just watching other YouTubers. I think I watched a really good video. I think it might be from the Computer History Museum. Maybe I think I did a long video on it.
Oh right, okay.
And yeah, they even had like a bunch of games, and they came in these big, beautiful, like chunky, like almost like SNK type cases. The Marty games. It had a floppy drive in it as well as a CD. Yeah. So it was basically like a DOS, like a good 386, might even be a 486 multimedia PC that's been consoleized. Yeah, really. I would love to have seen a European or an American version of that same thing that we could have, played Doom and all that on, but I think Fujitsu, wasn't it? Yep. Yeah, and they had an actual desktop version, which is what that was derived from, wasn't it? The FM Towns, I think.
Yeah.
I remember FM Towns Marty. Was that it? What was the Marty bit?
The Marty is they gave the consoleized version of the FM Towns.
Ah, okay. Because that's why, yeah. So I've heard of that one.
Console. It was the first 32-bit console before the 3DO came out, or the 32X or anything like that. It was the first 32-bit CD-based console before the CD32, but that was obviously more of a worldwide, kind of Europe and bit of maybe Canada. I think got the CD32, but
going back to a question you asked me earlier, why do I do what I do? This is why, because you learn things. I'd never even heard of the Marty. Didn't know it existed. Wow.
Oh, well, there you go.
You're gonna have to look that one up.
So what is your dream sort of system then? If was it the Enterprise or the FM Towns? Might that be the one?
No, they're ones I want, because I distinctly remember to this day what it felt like as a kid to want one and not get one. So that's just like ticking a box, really. I'm not going to go into my box without having owned one of those. But you know what? Again, going back to the old underdog tale, I don't think I will ever get over the feeling I had with some of the Sega Saturn games. Panzer Dragoon Saga. I mean, I just, that game did for me. I literally, probably the second game I actually finished. But I loved that, and Nights as well. That was Nights into Dreams. Again, because of not only it was a cool game, but what they got out of that machine. They did things with that machine that couldn't be done. And that just impresses me when you make something, do something it was never designed to do. I have just the utmost respect for those programmers who, it's like they find a flaw in the chip that allows you to do something. Like in Atari STs, when they have the people found out how to unlock all the borders so you could have full screen graphics, and it's just incredible. And I find it, I never cease to find it interesting when I find someone's done something that you can't do. And I just think that it just sparks of human ingenuity and that absolute, what do you mean I can't do it? Yeah, you watch me, mate, you know. So if I had a dream machine, well, it's certainly one to add to my collection would be a fully, I know I haven't examined what you can do, but if I could get a fully modded up Sega Saturn with every game that was ever made on a huge screen in front of me, I think that would probably be, you could just consider me done then, turn me over, I'm done.
You wouldn't need too much as well, actually. I mean, like, you know, Saturns are fairly common in the UK. We probably want to get a 60 hertz modded one. The Japanese grey model and the white one are fairly common as well. We wouldn't have to spend a lot on that. Obviously, the power supply you could switch out for a UK one so it'll run. But yeah, you might have to, like, I think the caps and the power supply on my Model 1 Saturn are going, which is weird. It's a weird thing where I can switch it on and start playing the game fine. No worries. I can do that all day long. If I reset it, I'll get really weird wavy lines and static on the screen. I have to turn it off for 20 minutes. And if I turn it back and it works fine, I think the caps are like going.
Yes, the cap's not discharging properly, so they're holding on to the current. And I
need to get someone to have a look at it and fix it.
And can you get SD card storage solutions for the Saturn?
Yeah, there's an amazing one.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's an amazing one that you should look up called the Satiator.
I love these names they come up with. It's great, isn't it?
The
Satiator, great.
The Satiator. You can look it up. There's a bunch of, like, Bob, our friend from Retro RGB, does a great review on it. Basically, it's like a little module that you pop into where the video CD card would go. That little
I remember.
Back where normally you'd go in there to swap the battery out, wouldn't you, for the internal save system? But you slot it in there. You pop an SD card in this thing, and it lets you. You can obviously put an SD card in that can fill the whole library of. I mean, the PAL sort of library, or even the US library, is probably only about, you know, a few gig, really, a few dozen gig to get the whole lot. But yeah, bung them all on there, and it will run them all. I think it's like pretty much 100% compatibility. So yeah, basically like a flash cart for the Saturn, and you can get to keep your CD-ROM drive. Obviously, a lot of the mods often require you to replace the CD-ROM with an ODE, you know, an optical drive emulator, which are great. But this one, you just pop this in the back. You've still got your CD drive. You can play all the Saturn games, and you got other things now. You got wireless pads from Retrobit, do really good Saturn wireless pads that are actually endorsed by Sega. I've got a couple of them myself. They're pretty good. So yeah, you've got that now. Always recommend getting the Action Replay 4 megabyte cart that you can pop in there. But you can still get those off Amazon, brand new. The 4 megabyte Action Replay, which means you can play all the 2D fighters that came out in Japan that use the RAM expansion. A lot of people are modding games now as well. Someone modded Castlevania Symphony of the Night, or Nocturne in the Moonlight, as the Saturn version is called, to use the RAM cart. Although I watched a review of the mod and someone said, I can't really tell any difference as to what it does.
That's got to be gutting for the guy that spent 10 years doing it, isn't it?
I mean, there's performance issues with that game on the Saturn because it's a PlayStation port, but I think maybe it's supposed to fix those by using this RAM. But so yeah, you can get. I mean, the Satiator isn't cheap, and it kind of, you have to go on a waiting list because he sort of gets a batch of them made, about £250. But you know, you'll pay that for Panzer Dragoon Saga, wouldn't you, to get a complete copy of that? Maybe more, actually, wouldn't you, for a fully boxed mint copy of that game that you were mentioning it already. So yeah, you know, you could save your cash, grab a Satiator, and you've got the whole Saturn library ready to go on your Saturn, and you can get really good. There's the Rad2X that I mentioned near the beginning of the show. So that gives you a straight Saturn to HDMI connection. Saturn's got really good RGB, so that looks great and crisp on a modern TV, modern 4K. I played Saturn on my 4K TV. It looks awesome still. So yeah, hopefully I haven't gone.
No, not at all. All I'm thinking now is what a bad idea it was being a guest on your show, because now I've just spent in my head hundreds of pounds because I've got to go and get all this stuff now that I didn't even know existed. So yeah, thanks for that. Cheers. Yeah. I'll explain to the Mrs. Retro Shack that it's all your fault, and
you can blame us. It's fine.
Absolutely.
On that note, I guess it's like a last thing as we're kind of approaching an hour anyway. I mean, do you collect do you do a lot of collecting? I mean, obviously you got the systems that we're seeing on your channel, but do you get games? Do you just get the systems? Do you just get consoles?
No, I've got consoles. I've got out in the actual shack itself. I've got a PS1, a PS2, PS3,
cool.
PS4. I've got GameCube, Wii, 3DS. I've got what else have I got? I've got various Nintendos in there. I've got GameCube. I've got a what else have I got? I've got loads of stuff. And then in terms of computers, I've got MSXs. I've got VIC-20s. I collect. And I say this
MSX actually. It's an interesting platform. Lots of big Konami sort of fan like Gradius and Castlevania and Contra, and there's a lot of cool versions of those games on MSX. Funnily enough.
Well, to a bit of a obviously a heads up for anyone who watches the channel, there is going to be an MSX series coming up very soon, followed by later in the year. If you enjoyed me watching me build a Spectrum, then I will be from scratch 100% building an MSX2.
Oh, nice one!
Wow. Yes, so that's going to be an interesting session as well, and that's fully cartridge compatible with the MSX2.
It's a little bit off topic, but I actually used to run a video game shop in Croydon, and I remember we had one MSX game in, and it always sat in the cabinet for years, not for years, maybe for months, and it was like a cartridge, and it had a big hole in it, so you could sort of put your finger in to take it out. And I always thought that was really cool.
Well, yeah, it's a good idea, isn't it, to save you having to squeeze and pull and.
It is mostly the cartridges, isn't it? It's what the games come on. And I think it has a cassette. Did it use cassettes as well?
It used a cassette as well, yeah.
Yeah, it had a cassette as well, but cassette was only really popular over in Europe. It wasn't a big medium. Certainly in the States, it wasn't a big medium at all. No, they didn't really do tape. I
don't think we got it here, did we? It was like France and Holland, and maybe got the European.
It definitely came out here because we had retail games that were all in English.
The biggest one that was sold over here was the Toshiba HX10. That was the big MSX model that made it over here. That you'll find more of those in the UK than any of the other models. And the thing is, I mean, just as I know we're closing in on time, but the MSX was such an interesting concept, because it was entirely at the wrong time in computing history. Because you've got basically what you've got is
it's Microsoft, I think, that originated it.
Yes, it was indeed. Yeah, Microsoft and a Japanese conglomerate who said, basically, if you imagine a time when every computer manufacturer in the world and every entrepreneur is thinking, what can I do different that sets me apart from everybody else? You've then got this group, this conglomerate in Japan with Microsoft involved as well. That goes, let's just make them all the same. You make one, but it's got to be compatible with the one I make. And it just seemed like slamming the brakes on to a world where everyone was going, no, I want something bigger and better and faster and stronger, and I want mine to be incompatible with yours because mine's better than yours. And therefore I want people to see the game on my system is better than the game on your system, so you'll buy my computer. And MSX just seemed such an out of its time thing to do. Whereas, of course, now that's exactly. That's exactly it.
Do that. Yeah,
but it was a big success in Japan, though, wasn't it? It was. I wouldn't know numbers, but was it sort of the best-selling 8-bit micro, or?
But they were kind of starved for. I mean, if you think about it, back in the 80s, the computer revolution wasn't really out of Japan. It was out of the UK and out of the US.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have a huge influx of machines in Japan, and it was a way of them having a foot in that market. But it was a great machine, the MSX. It just always struck a chord with me, being you've done exactly the right thing, but 30, 40 years too early. Nowadays, we want everything we buy to be compatible with everything else we've got, because, of course, why wouldn't you? I should be able to buy a, if a game comes out, I want to be able to get it on whatever console I've got and it play pretty much exactly the same, because that's just the way it is these days. But back then, it just seemed odd.
It was funny. Didn't really latch onto it. I mean, the interesting about the MSX, it's very close in specs to the ColecoVision. So there's actually a lot of the homebrew that's coming out for the ColecoVision are ports of MSX games. I think some of it needs, there's like an add-on module you can get for the ColecoVision called the Super Game module. I don't know if some of these MSX ports need that because it gives it extra RAM. But yeah, you can get like someone made Gradius and a bunch of other like Konami games that have made like a ColecoVision version because they're so similar specs wise. So, and you could actually sort of get your MSX fix via a ColecoVision, get yourself a PAL one and some of these homebrews that are coming out. So yeah, and I think then and subsequently like the Master System, I think is also quite close to the MSX as well. They're all part of that sort of Z8 the Zilog Z80 sort of processor sort of family of computers and things that used it. I think they all kind of are quite close, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting and not at all planned, but if you the video that's the next video up on the channel has an honorary mention of the ColecoVision because it does, because I'm doing the series on the Atari ST and I love that. The ColecoVision does get a mention in there because of its because quite frankly it was the first video game console to threaten the Atari 2600 VCS.
I would say the first next gen console in a way.
Yeah, it was, and interestingly as well. I'm going to go into a video about that in further detail. That whole slice of history, but of course, it was also the first grey area machine because you could buy a cartridge for your ColecoVision into which you could plug a 2600 VCS cartridge. So not only did they say our console's better than yours, but you can keep all your games if you buy our console. Just don't buy Ataris anymore. It was amazing how they got away with that. But
I don't want to grab one actually, a ColecoVision. They're semi-common in the UK. I haven't got around to doing it because they're not actually that cheap. But have you got one yourself? Have you got?
No, I did have one when I was a kid. We had one. I remember my dad bought one, and I loved it. It was great. The controllers were a bit quirky, but
I think you probably got the best versions of those. So when you think of the sort of the classic, there's like a set of like maybe a dozen or so classic arcade games like Defender and Donkey Kong, and along with like Atari VCS games like Pitfall, River Raid. You often have the best version of those games, or on the ColecoVision got a port of those games, and it's often the best version, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously, the Atari VCS had its killer app with Space Invaders. And then when the ColecoVision came out and it said, "Oh, by the way, here's an arcade perfect port of Donkey Kong," that kind of just was a nail in the coffin, really, for the VCS at that point. Because people, as you say, people went, "Oh, yeah, that's just let's face it, better, isn't it?"
Yeah, I think it wasn't until like NES that you got a better version. Well, like the Commodore 64 got a Donkey Kong, didn't it? I think I don't know if the Spectrum did, but I think the NES version
did. It got. I think the Spectrum one was called Crazy Kong or Killer Kong, and it was absolutely dreadful. So
it might have been. I think Coleco had the rights, didn't they, to the game? So maybe they ported it and just did a bad job to make you buy the ColecoVision.
maybe.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for joining us. Where can people catch you on the interwebs, on your YouTubes and Twitters, if you have those?
Yes, indeed. Well, if they make their way to the retroshack.uk, the webpage. Just the retroshack.uk. There is a link from there to the YouTube channel, and there's links to Twitter and all sorts of stuff on there as well. So if you're on YouTube, it's youtube.com / the Retro Shack, and that will get you to my page.
So check out Scott's channel. You see we've got a bit of a sneak preview there. We've got a little bit of Colecovision and a bit of Atari ST coming up on there. So yeah, we'll definitely be tuning in. So you guys should as well. Stu, what about us? Where can you find us?
Right, you can find us on iTunes. Basically, search the Console Shock for any of your podcast clients, and you'll be able to find us on there. We're on YouTube under Console Shock. You can find the website consoleshock.net, and then we're on Facebook and Twitter under Console Shock as well. So you can find us everywhere except for Instagram. We're not doing Instagram.
No, we're not having that. We're too much of a boomer to be doing any of that techno stuff. I'm going to plug my new podcast again one last time, maybe second to last time. I've just started a new podcast, actually on our third episode. It's on YouTube, it's on iTunes, it's on Stitcher. It's a Star Trek based podcast with former Console Shock co-host Al, who you saw on Console Shock a few episodes ago. We're doing a podcast, Star Trek based one. It's called Long Range Sensors. And you can check us out. Just search Long Range Sensors on Twitter. We've got a Twitter going for it. And we've also got a dedicated website for it as well, longrangesensors.com. Actually going to be doing another episode tomorrow. So hopefully there'll be a fourth episode coming out on that as well in the next couple of weeks. Thank you everybody again for checking out Console Shock, and we shall see you in the next one. Take care.
See you guys.